My name was Alastair Finch, or at least it was, before Harrowdale, before the pact, before the pig. I was a folklorist, a collector of forgotten stories and dying traditions. I believed that in the quiet, overlooked corners of the world you could find the unfiltered truth of humanity. I was arrogant. I was naive. I thought I was studying the darkness from a safe, academic distance. I didn't realize I was walking right into its open, hungry mouth. My journey began with a single, anomalous image tucked away in a dusty archive at Miskatonic University. It was a 19th century woodcut, crudely rendered but charged with a palpable sense of dread. It depicted a monstrous, bipedal pig, built like a blacksmith, wearing a blood-stained apron and holding a massive cleaver. It stood in the center of a medieval-looking village, under a full moon, with flayed carcasses hanging from the eaves of the houses. The caption was simple, chilling. "The shepherd of Harrowdale collects his tithe." It was a dead end, a historical anomaly. There was no record of a village named Harrowdale in any official census or map. It was a ghost, a fiction. But it was a fiction that refused to let me go. The image haunted my dreams. The name echoed in my waking thoughts. Harrowdale. It felt real, too real. After months of obsessive research, I found it. A single, hand-drawn map from the 17th century tucked into the back of a forgotten priest's journal. It showed a small, isolated valley, nestled deep in a remote, uncharted mountain range. A valley that had been deliberately erased from every subsequent map. A valley named Harrowdale. I had to go. My colleagues called me a fool. My family begged me not to, but the pull of the mystery was too strong. I was a scholar, and this was the discovery of a lifetime. I packed my bags, my research notes, and a healthy dose of academic skepticism, and I set out to find a ghost. I found more than a ghost. I found a nightmare. The journey itself was a warning. The roads became narrower, more treacherous, until they disappeared altogether, leaving only a faint, overgrown track leading into the oppressive, silent woods. The air grew colder, heavier, thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. After 2 days of hiking, my GPS dead, my compass spinning uselessly, I stumbled out of the trees and saw it. The valley. Harrowdale. It was exactly as the woodcut had depicted. A collection of sagging, timber-framed houses, their roofs thatched with moss, huddled together as if for warmth against a perpetual, unseen chill. The village was nestled in the shadow of the surrounding mountains, trapped in a permanent twilight. A thin, greasy smoke curled from a few chimneys, the only sign of life, but it was not a welcoming sight. It felt predatory. As I walked into the village, a silence fell. Not a peaceful silence, but a heavy, watchful one. Faces appeared in windows, their expressions a mixture of fear and a deep, sullen resentment. Doors were quietly barred. I was an outsider, a contamination. I felt 100 unseen eyes on me, and not a single one was friendly. I found the only inn, a place called the Slaughtered Hog. The name should have been my first clue. The innkeeper was a large, brutish man with small, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. He gave me a room, but not before asking a series of pointed, unsettling questions. What was my business here? How did I find this place? How long did I intend to stay? I gave him vague, scholarly answers, but I could tell he didn't believe me. He looked at me the way a farmer looks at a pig he's about to lead to the block. That night, I learned the first rule of Harrowdale. When the sun sets, you do not go outside. The village transforms. The fearful silence of the day is replaced by a new, more terrifying silence. A silence of anticipation. A silence of waiting. I sat in my room, listening to the frantic beat of my own heart, and I knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that something was hunting in the streets below. I spent the next few days trying to conduct my research, but it was impossible. The villagers were a wall of silence. They would not speak of their history, their traditions, or the monstrous figure from the woodcut. When I mentioned the name shepherd, they would spit on the ground and make a strange, warding gesture with their hands. They were terrified, but they were also complicit. It was an old woman, Maeve, who finally took pity on me. She was ancient, her face a road map of grief and hardship, but her eyes held a spark of defiance. She found me in the village square and pressed me a small, hand-carved wooden pig into my hand. "He has marked you," she whispered, her voice a dry rustle of leaves. "He has smelled the city on you, the outside world. He does not like it. You are a disruption. You must leave tonight, before the full moon."
I looked at the small, crudely carved pig. It seemed like a child's toy, but as I held it, a cold, creeping dread began to seep into my bones. I didn't understand, but I was beginning to be afraid. That night, the full moon rose over the valley, a great, cold, silver eye in the black sky. And the silence in the village was different. It was not just a waiting silence. It was a hungry silence. I sat in my room, the wooden pig on the table beside me, and I listened. And then I heard it. A sound that would haunt my nightmares for the rest of my life. The slow, heavy, deliberate tread of massive boots on the cobblestones below, and a low, guttural snort, the sound of a great, tusked boar. He was here, the shepherd, the butcher, and he was coming to collect his tithe. I didn't wait to see who he was coming for. I grabbed my pack, my research, and I fled. I climbed out the back window of the inn and dropped into a narrow, filthy alley. I ran, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get out of the village, out of the valley. I ran through the labyrinthine streets, the sounds of the butcher's approach echoing behind me. I could hear the screams now, a single terrified scream, cut short, and then a wet, chopping sound. Again and again. I didn't look back. I just ran. I found myself at the edge of the village, near an old, dilapidated mill by a sluggish black river. The door was unlocked. I slipped inside, barring it behind me, my body shaking, my lungs on fire. I was safe, for now. But I was not alone. A figure emerged from the shadows of the mill. A woman. She was young, her face pale and smudged with dirt, but her eyes burned with a fierce, defiant light. She held a sharpened piece of wood like a spear. This was not a frightened villager. This was a survivor. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice a low, steady whisper. I'm Alistair. I'm a folklorist. I was just trying to leave. No one leaves Harrowdale. Not once the butcher marks you." She pointed to the wooden pig that had fallen from my pocket. "He's coming for you now. You've led him right to me." Her name was Ilara. She was an art historian, and like me, she had been drawn to Harrowdale by a piece of its forgotten history, a series of unique frescoes in the abandoned chapel on the hill. She had been trapped here for 6 months, hiding, surviving, watching the gruesome ritual of the tithe from the shadows. She was the first person to speak to me of the pact. "It's a deal," she explained, her voice a low, bitter whisper as we huddled in the dusty darkness of the mill. "It's a deal made with a spirit of the wood, a hunger that calls itself the Grin. The village sacrifices one of its own every full moon, the tithe, and in return, the valley prospers. The crops never fail, the livestock are never sick. The butcher is the high priest of this religion. He chooses the offering, he performs the sacrifice, and he enforces the rules." As she spoke, we heard it, a heavy, rhythmic pounding on the mill door. He had found us. The butcher was here. We scrambled up to the top floor of the mill, the pounding growing louder, more insistent. The heavy wooden door began to splinter. We were trapped. I looked around desperately, my eyes falling on the great millstone in the center of the room and the sacks of flour stacked against the wall. "Help me!" I yelled to Ilara, and together we began to push the heavy sacks of flour against the trap door that led to the floor below. We were barricading ourselves in, buying ourselves a few precious moments. The door below finally gave way with a great, splintering crash. We heard his heavy footsteps on the floor below. He was inside. He was coming up. He reached the trap door and pushed. The heavy sacks of flour held. He pushed again, harder this time, a roar of frustration echoing from below. The trapdoor groaned, but it held. He was strong, but he was not invincible. Then the pushing stopped. Silence. A long, listening silence. And then a new sound. A scraping sound. The sound of a heavy blade being dragged against stone. He was sharpening his cleaver. He was not leaving. He was waiting. He knew we couldn't stay up there forever. He was laying siege to the mill.
We spent the next hour in a state of absolute, grinding terror. We were trapped, with a monster waiting for us below. But as the adrenaline began to fade, a new, colder fear began to set in. The sun would rise in a few hours. Would he leave then? Or had we, by hiding, by defying the ritual, broken the rules? Had we turned a ritual sacrifice into a personal hunt? Ilara was the one who saw it first. A flicker of movement outside the small, grimy window on the far side of the room. She crept over, her body low, and peered out. Her gasp was sharp, terrified. "What is it?" I whispered. "He's not waiting," she breathed, her face pale. "He's not trying to get in anymore. He's blocking the exits." I crawled to the window and looked out. The butcher was outside, his massive form a silhouette against the moonlit sky. He was dragging heavy logs, fallen trees, and piling them against the doors and windows of the mill, barricading us in from the outside. He wasn't just waiting for us to come out. He was sealing us in. He was turning our sanctuary into a tomb. And then I saw what he was holding in his other hand. A torch. A single, burning torch. My blood turned to ice. He wasn't going to wait for us to starve. He was going to burn us out. He was going to burn the mill to the ground with us inside it. We were no longer just the tithe. We were a problem to be erased, an anomaly to be cleansed with fire. The hunt was over. The extermination was about to begin. We were trapped. The monster outside was about to turn our hiding place into a funeral pyre, and the first licks of flame were already beginning to climb the old dry wood of the mill. Was this the end for the folklorist and the art historian? Or was there a way out of the inferno? The answer to that
we'll have to wait for Chapter 2. If you're as desperate to see what happens next as we were to survive, then do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you ring that notification bell because you are not going to want to miss the next part of this story. The story of how we escaped the fire only to run headfirst into the very heart of the butcher's nightmare, the slaughterhouse. Until next time, try to stay out of the dark.